And, as lawyers, it's our thing to try to be as excellent as we can. And that's a good trait. And we pay a lot of attention to detail, and that's important as well. But sometimes those tendencies of pursuing excellence and attention to detail, they go overboard. We get carried away with them. They become too much, too unrealistic. And they can lead to perfectionism, which actually makes us less successful and in fact harms our well-being. And if you're a lawyer who struggles with perfectionism, you feel constant pressure to meet unrealistic expectations, and that leads to high stress, anxiety, and burnout. And lawyers who struggle with perfectionism often have a difficult time delegating tasks. Why? Because they can't do it as well as we can. We spend too much time on minor details. We don't want a comma to be misplaced, and we fear making a mistake or failure.
Welcome to the Free Lawyer Podcast. I'm your host, Gary Miles. The Free Lawyer Podcast is designed for the lawyer, entrepreneur, or professional who is in some way unfulfilled, stressed, or stuck, and is looking for something better. We will discuss various blocks that limit us from achieving the personal freedom that we all desire, but have not yet fully experienced. And we will give actionable steps to free yourself from them. Are you looking to achieve a new level of success? If so, this podcast is for you.
Hey everybody, thank you for joining us today for The Free Lawyer. Hope you like today's episode. It's on a really important topic of perfectionism. And if you're like me, it's something that has affected you from time to time. I know for me, it's been a huge problem through much of my legal career. Some of you know I've started a YouTube channel. If you would like to see the video of this podcast or any other podcast I release, you can see the video of me or of me and the guest. The episodes are dropped on Mondays and Thursdays. On Tuesdays, I post a podcast on YouTube of one of my all-time hit shows, if you will. One of the ones that was popular as a podcast, I then post the video of it. So check out my YouTube channel. Find it under my name, The Free Lawyer. You can find it easily. I also want to thank you for your support with the ratings and reviews that you give me. And if you like what you hear here, if what the messages I provide are of some support to you, I'd like you to do me a favor. Folks always say, what can I do for you? Write a rating and review of the podcast. It would mean so much to me. It really would. And I like to read reviews of folks who've been so nice to post them and to give you a little bit of shout out. And this one is from Melanie Hirschhorn. And I don't know if you all know Melanie. She's pretty amazing. She will be a guest on the podcast. She helps we lawyers write books that set us apart and help us to be seen as the expert in our field. And Melanie is really spectacular. And I'd suggest you find her on LinkedIn and connect with her. She really is great. So this is Melanie's review, which she posted recently. Attorneys will gain so much value from Gary's insights and from the great guests he brings on. It's essential listening for lawyers. Thank you so much, Melanie. And thank you to those who have written me a rating or review. I appreciate it because it helps this podcast be seen by more people. And you all know that's the reason I do these. I'm up to episode 222 or somewhere around there now with ones I've recorded and scheduled for release. So it's pretty, it's a lot. And you guys give me such wonderful support, and I really do appreciate you. So today we're going to talk about perfectionism and how to manage our tendency toward perfectionism so we can achieve a life of balance and success and really personal freedom. And you all know that's what I'm about. How can you practice law so that you feel personally free in your practice? So let me ask you some questions. You know, I do this a lot. Do you ever find that you fret or worry over the possibility that you made mistakes in the past? Or in your matters that are pending? Do you worry that you might make a mistake on one of them? Are you ever concerned about the expectations other people have of you? If so, you may be struggling with perfectionism. And perfectionism can create huge problems from us, from procrastination to severe anxiety and stress. And, as lawyers, it's our thing to try to be as excellent as we can. And that's a good trait. And we pay a lot of attention to detail. And that's important as well. But sometimes those tendencies of pursuing excellence and attention to detail, they go overboard. We get carried away with them. They become too much, too unrealistic. And they can lead to perfectionism, which actually makes us less successful and in fact harms our well-being. And if you're a lawyer who struggles with perfectionism, you feel constant pressure to meet unrealistic expectations, and that leads to high stress, anxiety, and burnout. And lawyers who struggle with perfectionism often have a difficult time delegating tasks. Why? Because they can't do it as well as we can. We spend too much time on minor details. We don't want a comma to be misplaced, and we fear making a mistake or failure. So in today's episode, we're going to talk about what perfectionism is, how it affected me in my legal career, and the signs and causes of perfectionism. I'll describe the consequences of it for you in your life, and most importantly, I'll give you practical tools for overcoming it, for promoting a healthier work-life balance, greater success, greater freedom, greater well-being. So what is perfectionism? I mean, we all kind of know, don't we? A perfectionist strives for flawlessness. He can get fixated on perfection. He tries to control all the situations around him. Often motivated by fear and paralyzed by the idea of failure, we have a hard time letting our work go. We pressure ourselves to meet unattainable standards. We're highly critical of ourselves, and we beat ourselves up about anything that doesn't meet that incredibly high standard. They fear being low achievers if they don't achieve perfection. And sometimes that fear of failure is so paralyzing that they procrastinate. Perfection is not a tool for success. It's a tool for failure. It holds us back. And of course, perfectionism is very different from being a high achiever. It's wonderful to always strive for excellence, to have high standards, to be persistent in the face of adversity, and to strive to do our best. That's really good. But what about for we lawyers? Perfectionism is when we set such extremely high standards for ourselves and are overly critical of our work and the work of others. And it leads to high stress levels, anxiety, and burnout. Have you experienced any of those? So let me share a little bit about my story. In high school, I was really quite heavy. Well, to be honest, I was what one would call, not very nicely, I was fat. I was very, very overweight. I wore these incredibly nerdy glasses, and I was extremely bright. I was the best student in my class, my high school class, really by far. And combining all those traits of being fat, nerdy, and geeky, and brilliant made me the butt of many jokes, even bullied. And I often felt like no matter what I did, it wasn't good enough at home. I was filled with a powerful desire to please everyone, my parents and my classmates, to win approval. As a result, I did exceptionally well in high school and college and law school. In fact, I was top of my class in each. But despite that, and probably in part because of my upbringing, I always felt that nothing was ever good enough. And when I entered law practice in my early years, everything had to be perfect. And that led to my procrastinating and feeling additional stress. I've learned, having now practiced for 45 years, the importance of overcoming perfectionism. And I've learned how to do it, because it is just a way that we create our own misery. Our practice of law is difficult in itself, isn't it? We have a lot of ways that we feel stress from other lawyers, from our workload, from our partners. But perfectionism is a stress we create ourselves. And what are the telltale signs of perfectionism? How do you know when you might be suffering from perfectionism? These are some of the most prominent traits. And let me ask you this, as I read through this list and explain them, tell me if any of these sound familiar to you. Are these feelings or experiences you've ever felt? If so, perhaps perfectionism is something you need to look at. Perhaps your striving for excellence has gone over the top and led into perfectionism. So these are some of the signs of perfection. The first is black and white thinking. Perfectionists are unsatisfied with doing a great job. They accept nothing less than perfection. If it's not perfect, it's a failure. An excellent job is seen as a failure if it is imperfect. 2, highly critical. Perfectionists are hypercritical of themselves and of others. They focus on imperfections and are judgmental and hard on themselves. Perfectionistic lawyers focus on minor mistakes rather than the overall outcome. 3, controlled by fear of failure. Perfectionists are motivated by fear of not achieving their goals and of doing anything to avoid being seen as a failure. As a result, they set an unrealistic goal of achieving perfection. Because they focus so much on the outcome, failure becomes a very scary prospect. Unrealistic standards. Perfectionists set goals that are often unattainable. Hardly surprising, because perfection simply isn't achievable. 5, focus only on the outcome. Instead of focusing on the process of achieving their goals, perfectionists obsess about the results and strive to avoid the failure that they dread. 6, and here it is, fear of failure. When perfectionists don't achieve their goals, they get stuck in negative feelings and beat themselves up too much because they see themselves as a failure. They have an intense fear of failure and may avoid taking risks, trying new kind of cases, or pursuing opportunities because they could potentially fail. 2, high expectations. Perfectionist lawyers set high standards that are nearly impossible to achieve, leading to a constant feeling of dissatisfaction and failure. Difficulty delegating tasks. No one can do it better than me. As a result, I often feel I'm the only one who can do the job properly. And so, even though I have staff who could help and support me, I hesitate to delegate the tasks to them. 9, spending too much time on tasks. Perfectionist lawyers spend excessive time on tasks, even when unnecessary, because they want everything to be perfect. Have you ever found that you just keep going back and looking at that memo and reading it and afraid to let it go because you don't want there to be some mistake in there that you missed? I know I used to do that all the time. And 10, and most importantly, struggle with work-life balance. Sometimes we prioritize work so much over our personal life that we find it difficult to relax, enjoy family, or take breaks. And that's particularly true of perfectionists. Have you ever experienced any of those symptoms? So what causes perfectionism? Why would we have such an unhealthy perfectionist attitude? Why do we struggle so much with that? These are some of the causes. Personality traits. Some of us just have personalities that are susceptible to perfectionism, such as a strong need to control, a fear of failure, or a tendency towards obsessiveness. 2, professional expectations. The legal profession emphasizes precision, attention to detail, and excellence. And those traits taken to an extreme contribute to our developing perfectionistic tendencies. Fear of consequences. Our clients depend on us so much, don't they? For their matters being resolved well, for excellent work. And the potential effects to our clients are very substantial. We know how our clients rely on us for a successful result. that increases the pressure to strive for perfection. 4, high workload and pressure. We have so much work to do, and we work under such extraordinary pressure. The time deadlines are demanding. That creates a sense of urgency to work quickly and perfectly. Early life experiences. Childhood experiences such as parental pressure to achieve can contribute to the development of perfectionism in lawyers. I told you about my experience as a child and how what I experienced being picked on and bullied and gave me an obsession with perfectionism just to curry the favor of those around me. 6, low self-esteem. Despite our accomplishments and our talents, we're often burdened by self-doubt. We feel that our accomplishments determine our self-worth. And we doubt ourselves. We question ourselves even though we're successful. So what's one way to overcome that self-doubt? Do a perfect job. That compels us to seek perfection as a way to prove ourselves. We must understand the causes of perfectionism to overcome it and to achieve a healthy work-life balance. So how does perfectionism affect us? It has some really serious consequences, including procrastination. We want to be perfect all the time, don't we? And we won't let our emotions go out. We won't do anything until it's absolutely perfect. So we spend too much time and energy on minor details rather than the big picture. And procrastination creates more stress and anxiety for us. We delay doing projects timely because we worry about making them just right. And then we become later and we feel more pressure and more stress and more anxiety. It's a terrible, terrible cycle. 2, stress and anxiety. We put so much pressure on ourselves as perfectionists. We make ourselves more vulnerable to other problems, such as anxiety and depression and frustration. And to compound the problem as perfectionists, we always want to appear to be in control. So we try to hide the stress and anxiety we feel, which really only makes it worse. Health problems, we can develop health issues, stress-related health conditions, and mental health issues such as anxiety, depression, or insomnia. Impaired relationships. Our perfectionism can cause strained relationships with our family, friends, and coworkers. Our high standards put stress and pressure on those around us. Being overly critical of ourselves and others creates strains in our relationship. It's hard to turn our controlling perfectionist attitude off with others. And when we bring that attitude into our relationships, they can also be damaged because sometimes we hold our partners to the same excessive standards we have for ourselves. The other problem is we're often not present in the moment. We worry so much about the future and controlling the outcome and making things just perfect that we can get stuck in our heads. We're often not focused on the present and we're not mindful, and that accentuates the feeling of procrastination and disappointment. And the last 2 are the most important. Reduced job satisfaction. Our perfectionism can lead to constant feelings of dissatisfaction and failure, as we can never be perfect. As a result, we become frustrated and overwhelmed at work. 7, burnout. We may feel constant pressure to meet unrealistic expectations. That leads to stress, intense stress, and ultimately burnout. Your perfectionism, if it's something you experience in your job, will really take away your lack of fulfillment in your work. You'll be much more susceptible to burnout. And it's a cancer that just feeds on itself and grows. The more we procrastinate because we're trying to be perfect, the later our projects are, the more they build up, the more pressure we feel, the more stress we feel, the more we hate our job. It just goes on and on. So how do we overcome perfectionism? Are you tired of being your own worst enemy? This is the good news about perfectionism. It doesn't have to be that way. There are so many things in your life and in your world that you can't control. But one of the things you can do is overcome perfectionism. And I'm going to give you 12 strategies for you to follow to overcome your perfectionism. The first is self-awareness. It is so critical to be aware of your perfectionist thoughts and tendencies. Be mindful of what you're thinking, of what you're saying to yourself. I even suggest writing them down to understand them better. Once you realize how perfectionism works in you, once you realize the thoughts you're telling yourself, the way you may be saying, oh my gosh, I better check this again to make sure there's no mistake. Or what if I made some mistake in that agreement I sent out? You're much more able to change your self-talk once you understand what you're thinking. You can change the stories you tell yourself about how you need to be perfect, but it has to begin with self-awareness. 2, practice self-compassion. Challenge your inner critic. Discard those negative thoughts. We can be so critical of ourselves, can't we? I know I'm absolutely my own worst critic. I'm so much nicer to everyone in my world than I am to myself. And we allow these negative thoughts to enter our head like I'm not good enough. Please don't let your desire to be excellent cause your own struggles. Negative self-talk hurts both your emotional well-being, your productivity, and your success. To take a step back and be kind to yourself. Speak to yourself like you would speak to that young associate you're training, or like you would talk to your child who made a mistake. So practice some self-compassion and be nice to yourself. 2, accept your mistakes. We all make mistakes. It's okay. It's not the end of the world. Failing doesn't make you a failure. Your mistakes allow you to learn, to grow, and to improve. Every mistake teaches us some important lesson that we don't learn from an unqualified success. If my Baltimore Ravens win the game 57-0, that was really good, but we didn't learn a darn thing. But when we have a game where the other team finds our mistake and we lose, or they find the weakness in our defense, or they find a way to stop our offense that we didn't think about before, we've learned something and we can get better for the next game. 4, be positive. We sometimes struggle with focusing on the negative aspects of our work performance and of ourselves. So instead of thinking of what you do wrong or don't do well enough, make a conscious effort to recognize what you do well. Even write down a list of things you do that are positive and helpful. 5, set realistic goals. Perfectionists set unattainable goals. Their standards are simply too high or impossible. You'll feel much less stressed and more confident when your goals are reasonable. 6, accept criticism. Sometimes there are people in our world who give us helpful, constructive comments, but perfectionists struggle with receiving advice from other people. Sometimes perfectionists take criticism personally, but those constructive suggestions help you to improve. Try to accept that healthy criticism because it can be essential for your growth. 7, don't pressure yourself. The worst pressure we feel is what we put on ourselves. It's much greater than the pressure our law firm puts on us or our clients put on us. Lower those standards you may have set for yourself. Instead, be proud of your performance. 8, don't procrastinate. Perfectionists almost always procrastinate. We give ourselves all sorts of excuses to delay completing our project. Our desire to be perfect stops us from achieving our goals. It not only hurts our productivity, but it creates stress. So calendar your projects, focus on them, and finish them on time. And in fact, set a calendar for their completion with some dates in advance of when they're due so you can stay on track. 9, strive for excellence. Be an excellent lawyer, but let go of seeking perfection. If you're excellent in your field, that's wonderful. Who doesn't want to be an excellent lawyer? And that allows for the occasional mistake or setback, but encourages you to strive to achieve your goals. 10, don't expect those around you to be perfect. One of the worst things about perfectionism is we impose that attitude on others around us. We expect them to execute at a level of perfection as well. And that not only impairs our relationships with those people, but it affects their performance. So not only should you adjust your expectation of yourself, but also try not to hold others to that standard of perfection. 11, prioritize self-care. Taking care of yourself physically and mentally can help you to reduce stress and promote overall well-being. So sleep well, eat well, take breaks, find exercise. I know all those things sound like, oh, we say the same thing over and over again, but you know why we do? Because it's so important. But we get working so hard, we get stuck in this cycle trying to be perfect. We don't find time to take care of ourselves. And 12th, and really most importantly, seek support from colleagues, friends, mental health professionals, or particularly a mentor. They can give you a healthy perspective and tools for managing perfectionism. You know, I've had the opportunity as a mentor to work with a lot of amazing lawyers, and almost every one of them struggles with perfectionism. It's so common in our profession, and it takes time. And it's one of those things it's hard to correct on your own without guidance. You know, I'm an avid golfer. I've been playing for 55 years. I've had a coach my whole life, and I still need a coach because I never quite know what my bad habits are in my swing, what I'm doing wrong, and also don't know what I'm doing right. So as a mentor, I help these amazing lawyers see when they've crossed the line from being conscientious, being hardworking, and slipping over into perfectionism. And, you know, if you would like any help or support in dealing with perfectionism in your career, please reach out to me. I'd love to just have a chat with you because I know I can help. I can free you from that tendency. And there's so much pressure in your world. I know that. I've been there. But perfectionism is a pressure we create ourselves. It's a pressure we impose on ourselves, and we don't need to. So keep these strategies in mind and start trying to apply them, and find someone who you can be accountable to. Be self-aware of your thoughts. Know when you're slipping into perfectionistic thoughts. Practice self-compassion. Be easy on yourself. Forgive yourself. Accept your mistakes. We all make them, and instead learn from them. Be positive. Give yourself positive thoughts. Think about what you do well. Set realistic goals. When you get constructive feedback, listen to it and accept it. Don't pressure yourself so much. Don't procrastinate. Plan and prioritize your projects. And let go of trying to be perfect. Instead, strive to be excellent. And please don't expect those around you to be perfect. It's not reasonable. Take care of yourself. You deserve it. And find a mentor or a guide who can help you to work through these things. You know, perfectionism is real, particularly for high-achieving lawyers like us. In our desire to excel, we go overboard, and we create standards that are simply impossible to achieve. And that creates stress and leads to procrastination. But we can control these tendencies by setting reasonable standards, accepting our failures, and striving for excellence. And if you'd like to set up a call to chat about your perfectionism and how to overcome it, I'll put a link in the show notes that you could schedule a courtesy call with me. You know, I call this the free lawyer because it's about how you and I can enjoy personal freedom as lawyers. And one of the biggest prisons we put ourselves in is a prison of perfectionism. But we can manage that. We can overcome that. It's within our control. It's within your control. You don't have to feel that way. You don't have to suffer that stress, worrying about if you might have made a mistake on something you did last week. You don't need to feel that. If I can help you, please reach out to me. I want to thank each and every one of you for being here today. I appreciate you. Have a great day. And as I always say, please be well, be safe, and be free.
Thank you so much for listening to today's episode of the Free Lawyer Podcast. Wherever you are listening, if you enjoyed what I shared, please leave me a rating and review. I would appreciate hearing more about what you like best and what topics you might like me to cover in future episodes. If you are interested in experiencing a more fulfilling and a more successful life, please contact me at www.garymiles.net, where you can schedule a free discovery call with me so I can learn more about you, your challenges, and your dreams. I appreciate each and every one of you and have a great rest of your day. Thanks to all of you for your support.